It'll work. Yes, we're now. The recording is now working.
Oh, good stuff.
Okay, so Carolyn, first of all, thank you for talking to me today and to the students, of course, in the classroom. I wanted to begin. We're going to talk, of course, about the impact of technology on people at work.
Yeah.
And my first question was really if you could describe for the students what your background is and what your current job is.
Okay, well, I'm a work psychologist, but I have an interest in technology and new technologies, and so I guess I'm dealing more with the social side and the people side of technology in most of my interest and research. I'm a senior lecturer at the Institute of Work Psychology at the University of Sheffield in the UK.
Thank you. That's concise. That tells us what you do. You've been involved with working with organisations, helping them develop new working practices, particularly in relation to new technology. Can you just give us a sense of that and what you've done?
Okay, I mean, in the old days, it used to be much bigger technology, so it was more large pieces of manufacturing, kit, or perhaps, mail sorting machinery. And I guess more latterly, it's become the smaller pieces of technology, so computers and, mobile technologies, etc. And so, again, really, because most of the time when people design technologies, well, at least in the past, they didn't really think so much about how it was going to impact on the social processes that occurred within organisations. And so really my role was to try and redress that balance in a sense. So it didn't just become technology-centred, but also person-centred. So I think, I don't know if you will have heard of socio-technical theory, but okay, good. So I guess I'm sort of putting in the socio side of things there to balance up that technical side and trying to optimise the two,
Thank you, and that's important for our students. So, as an overall question, do you think that technology today is having a negative or a positive impact on people's jobs?
Okay, well, I mean, I'd say overall it's a positive impact. I mean, if we look historically, particularly in terms of saving people from certain aspects of very severe manual labour, technology has helped in that regard. And also in terms of saving people time, it's helped there too. So probably an overall positive effect, but there are downsides. So there's a double-edged sword, I suppose you could call it. Because particularly with more modern technologies, there can be greater intrusion into people's home life, for instance. So with the handheld mobile devices, for instance, people knowing when to switch off and not answer, phone calls anymore or answer emails anymore and stuff like that. There's also the danger that because we give a lot of our work now to technology, it can simplify people's work somewhat. So you can take away maybe some of the more interesting tasks and give it to technology, and it leaves people with maybe more boring, monitoring tasks, for instance. So that can be problematic. And also, I think, the opposite is also now happening with the more mobile technologies, in that I think it can lead to an intensification of work because people are suffering more from information overload because they're getting a lot more stuff sent to them and having to deal with more information and having to, cope with that greater complexity in a sense. So I think there's several different dimensions to how it can impact on work. But overall, I'd say probably it's been a positive impact overall.
Thank you. And you alluded there, I guess, a bit about people being more switched on. People are working more now virtually. What sort of issues do you see with virtual working, both for the individual, but also perhaps for the organisation? Yeah, well, again, it's a double-edged sword, I think.
the main reason people do the virtual, it depends what you mean by virtual working. I mean, there's the virtual working when people are teleworking from home, and they may be alone in that situation, or there's virtual working where perhaps you're collaborating with lots of different people across the globe, but you're all in an office-based environment. So there's sort of two different things. So if we talk about the virtual teams, which is people working together, you know, perhaps globally, but all within an office environment, I mean, that has great advantages, obviously, because it allows organisations to tap into knowledge from all over the place. It doesn't matter where people are anymore. So this, you know, has great potential. So in terms of, you know, getting more local knowledge, for instance, if you're trying to sell something in a different country, then having collaborators within that country with that local knowledge could be really beneficial. You know, so it helps organisations to get hold of a load of knowledge they wouldn't otherwise have had. The problem is, I think, with this type of work is then trying to integrate that knowledge together, because technologies are really great at allowing, you know, fairly lean communication, shall we say. I think what technology is less good at is allowing people to have more complex interactions. It's getting better, and there are more devices available now so that people can do multiple things online. But I think that needs to improve more so that we can actually collaborate more effectively. So, for instance, in the past, you know, and even today, people still rely on email a lot. And text-based communications are very lean in terms of the social cues that are conveyed via them. And so there can then be great potential for misunderstandings, for instance. You know, and the classic example is of people working in America and the UK working in different measurements. And they haven't made this explicit to each other, and they might be building one part of a particular satellite technology in one country, the other part in another, and then they bring the two parts together and they don't fit, because the UK have been working in centimetres and the US have been working in inches. So, you know, sometimes if you don't make those sorts of things explicit, then that can be, you know, problematic. So these leaner technologies can be problematic from the point of view of you lose information about the context that different people are in. Whereas if you'd gone to actually visit them, you'd know a lot more about what's going on for them, etc. So I think that, you know, that can that knowledge can be lost, I think, if you're doing things virtually. So there can be a bit of a cost there. But if we talk about working when you're teleworking from, or telecommuting, I think you call it in North America, where you maybe have one individual working from home and then they're collaborating with people in a main office. I mean, again, this can have great advantages in terms of you don't have to commute in every day. It cost less in terms of you know, travel costs, etc. Also, it means that you're able to people who maybe couldn't ordinarily get into work, perhaps because of a disability or childcare responsibilities, they're perhaps more able to work. So again, it can be really useful from that point of view. The downside could be in terms of potential isolation, and getting people socialised into the organisation. If they never go into that organisation or very rarely go in, it can be quite difficult to build up those relationships. And the same would happen on virtual teams as well. Sometimes, you know, those relationships can be more difficult to develop when you never see someone or very rarely see someone. So developing of trust and all those very important human, you know, sort of traits that we have in a way that help us to collaborate with each other. Some of those things can be more difficult to develop when you're doing things remotely and virtually via technology. So that's a very long answer to that question.
But a good one. It was all important. So, I mean, these changes, do you think they're impacting work organisation, how work's organised today?